Hi guys, my name is Seba Marinquiras, and I'm a freshman at Stanford University. For the past 2 months, I've been tutoring high school and middle school students on primarily SAT math, but also just math classes at school. Today I'm going to tell you about how I got into the side hustle and about my business model. So how the idea came to be. I spent a lot of time studying for the SAT while in high school, and I eventually got to a score that I was satisfied with. But there were two big problems that made that process more harder than it really should have been. First was the fact that all the SAT tutors that I was trying to look at were way too expensive. There were some tutoring places that would charge up to $170 an hour, or even some of the more affordable ones were $72 an hour. And so that was way more than I wanted to make my parents pay, and way more than a lot of families would be willing or able to pay. The second problem was the fact that a lot of the SAT tutors would teach you how to do the problems, but not actually coach you through them. They would teach you how to do the math, but not coach you through how to think about the problem and how to approach it from a more psychological perspective. And so the problem with that was, I already knew how to do the math, but I would freak out during the tests and not be able to do them. So seeing these two problems, I decided that after high school, I could actually offer very inexpensive SAT classes that would also hit at the fact that students not only need to know how to do the math, but they also need to know how to think about the problems. And so this was a good idea for a few reasons. First was the fact that it was great money for me. Charging $40 or $60 an hour, I would make way more than I would ever make at a minimum wage job or at any side hustle I could think of. The other good thing about it was that I was actually providing great service to my community. I was helping students get ready for the SAT in a more affordable fashion and in a more time-effective fashion that was actually personalized for them. The final thing that I liked about this idea was that I was actually putting all the time I invested in high school towards getting good at the SAT to a different and better use. So, about the actual classes. The way that I structured my classes is very simple. I do two main things. First, and this usually happens for the first few sessions with students, we actually take a look at different SAT math practice tests that they've taken, and we go through every single question that they got wrong or that they simply struggled with, and we go through three different things. First is the actual math behind the problem. That's where the actual tutoring comes in. I give them different strategies on how to do the problems, and we try to see what would work best for them. Second, I tell them what the College Board is actually thinking when they're making this question. Are they just trying to intimidate you and confuse you with decimals or fractions? Are they making this question so that you'll spend a lot of time on it and not be able to spend more time on other problems? Or is this a real question that is legitimate and is simply testing how good you are at math? And so there's very important distinctions between those three categories. And finally, we also take a look at how they should think about the question so that it's less intimidating, so that what it really comes down to is their math abilities and not what they're thinking in their head, oh, this question's so hard, etc. The second thing that we do is I make worksheets for my students so that they'll be able to work on problems that they specifically struggle with. I make different variations of the problems so that they'll have to use different strategies and in that way be able to see which strategy actually works best for them so that they'll be able to use it on the test to get more questions right and do so more quickly. So let's talk about my actual business model. What's very important to realize here is that there were actually very low barriers to entry into SAT or just math tutoring. I actually just started tutoring my sister at the beginning, and in that way I got experience and kind of got a feel for how I should structure my classes and what worked best. Next, I just started talking to my friends about it and family friends and see if anyone was interested. And slowly as I started gaining more customers and getting more comfortable with the idea of tutoring people, I started advertising on Instagram and trying to get a larger amount of students to the point where right now I have 7 students. And slowly in that way, I built my way up to where I am right now. And so when you're starting your side hustle, if it's this or something else, I would very strongly recommend starting off small, kind of figure out the little details, and then start to scale up as you're comfortable. And in that way, there won't be any point where you'll be blindly going through trying to provide a service for people that you don't really know how to provide. As of the actual cost structure, I charge $40 an hour if people come to my house, or $60 an hour if I go to a location of their choice, usually their house. And so this is good for a few reasons. First of all, the fact that I charge $60 an hour to go to people's houses is to offset the price of an Uber, because I don't drive, so actually getting there and back will cost money to me. And so thinking about that little detail before I actually set my prices was very important, because if I hadn't thought about it, I would actually be losing money every time I tutored someone at their house. I really thought about prep time, so the time that it would actually take me to read up on different College Board books, or the time that I would actually spend making worksheets for people. Because right now I'm spending about 30 minutes for every hour that I tutor just prepping things out. And so before I actually set my prices, I had to make sure that even with that half an hour for every hour worked in, I was actually making an amount that I was happy and comfortable with. And so that was really important. Again, there's a theme of optimizing your business in the sense that you have to think of every little detail that is very important. When you're thinking about your pricing model, really think about every little cost that will be involved. One very important thing to remember is to niche your business to what your customers need, but also to what you're comfortable with. So for me personally, when taking the SAT, I really struggled with the reading and writing sections. So I would never actually be able to tutor someone in those sections and actually give my customer the value that they're paying for, but actually also be comfortable while teaching them. So that's why I picked just doing SAT math. So one of the ways in which I helped my word of mouth marketing happen was by actually incorporating the people that I knew into my business. I did this in two ways. First, I offered a 10% commission to anyone who would refer a student to me for the first 2 sessions. The second thing I did is I started paying people 60% of what I would pay an Uber to get me to a student's house and back. And in that way, they would earn their own money, but I would also optimize the cost of my own business model. So what I did was very simple. I identified problems that I saw in my own community. I identified a way in which I could help my community with those problems. And then I figured out my business model. I looked at every single cost that would be involved. I also looked at every single way in which I could optimize those costs. And finally, I put everything together into a cohesive business plan that I could slowly start marketing to people. Thank you guys for watching, and thanks to the College Hustle for inviting me on the show. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. And if you really like this video, make sure you leave a like below and subscribe.